Now this is something you probably use a lot of, pencil and paper, right? I know you were using a pencil and paper earlier on in the day. And you know, when we write on a pencil with a pencil on a sheet of paper, we can magically make it disappear, can't we? Well, the Bible tells us that God does this very same thing with our sins if we do a certain thing. Now, God doesn't have to write down our sins because He has a good memory. He can remember everything. He knows everything about you. He knows how many hairs you have on your head. Do you know how many hairs you have on your head? I don't. And I don't want to count them. It takes too long. But He knows everything about us, and He sees all that we do, and He knows what we do. But the Bible talks about, gives us examples about things that God does that make sense to us. And one thing He says, it's like He has a list of all of our sins on a piece of paper. Can you imagine if everything you did were written on this piece of paper? But do you know what He does? If you ask Him to forgive you, He erases them. And they're not there anymore. There's no record of it. He doesn't keep a record anymore. If you ask Him about that sin, you said, well, I pulled my dog's tail the other day. And He'd say, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, that would be His attitude. But the key is we have to ask Him to forgive us when we do things that we shouldn't do. And that's one thing I like about parents teaching their kids to pray at bedtime. Because that's a great time to kind of unburden yourself with all the things that you've done. That's a great time to say to God, forgive me because I punched my little sister today and because I pulled the puppy dog's tail. That's a good habit to get into. And God loves to hear from you. He loves to hear your prayers. He loves for you to talk to Him. And He wants you to do that every day. So I encourage you that every day you say a prayer to God. Because it's just talking, that's all it's doing. So let's talk to God right now, all right? Somebody want to say a special prayer? Anybody have one in mind? Okay, I'll say a prayer. Oh, you have something you want to say to God? What do you want to say to God? Oh, that's a wonderful prayer. Her prayer today is thank you for letting her come to church today. Isn't that nice? And we're so happy that Ella is here today. So we're really grateful for that. So we'll remember that when we say our prayer. Father, we thank you for this time that we have to come to your house to study your word and to listen to it being spoken to us and to ponder on it and to sing songs. And we thank you for all these children that have come today. And we ask you, Father, would you forgive them for all those things that they've done that they shouldn't, those sins in their lives. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Good thing you were having a junior church instead of a senior church, Teresa, because some of us could probably tell you how many hairs we had on our head. Not near as many as I had yesterday, I'm sure. Good to be with you this morning.
Good day.
It's kind of like coming home. I see some new faces, but I see a lot of old friends too. And I was looking to see when I was here last time, and it was almost 14 months ago today that on a Friday evening, Teresa called me. I always know when Teresa calls, if I hear a smile in her voice, I know what I'm going to be doing on Sunday. If her voice, there's sadness in her voice, I know that somebody's died. Fortunately, this time, there was a smile in her voice. So on the way up here, I thought, well, I'm making my annual pilgrimage to Oak Hill. So thank you for calling, Teresa. Thanks for having me. It's good to see all of you. To touch base, I always had when I was here, we always had some time for good news and kind of catching up. Anybody got any good news to share? I haven't seen you for a year and a half and 2 months, I guess. So anything exciting happening in anybody's life?
Well, God has been so good to my family. You know, we contacted you when Micah became rather seriously ill. He is doing very well, and he's even now 18 and out of high school and has a job. So you don't know about that, do you?
I didn't know he was out of high school, for God's sake. These kids that were here on this front pew, what,
A few years.
20-some years ago, they've all grown up. And it just amazes me when I think about, you know, the things, the trouble they used to give me on Sunday morning when I would open up and give them the opportunity to participate. I never knew exactly what was coming. They had to keep me quick on my feet, but it just amazes me that these children, they're adults. They've grown up. That's one of the good things about coming back. I guess, I don't know, I was trying to think, I came here in the fall of '93, didn't I?
Yeah.
93. Of course, that's been a while back, hasn't it? So I guess the kids have grown up.
Brother Fran, our Benjamin graduated from Rose,
That's what I hear.
and our Jenny is a senior at Mercy, so we're very proud of her.
And I'm engaged, so we're gonna throw that on top.
I'm not doing that.
You're engaged?
Yes. You didn't know that, everybody else here knows that.
I need to talk to that young man, Jenny.
You talk to her.
Huh?
Good luck.
Well, I see some of you from time to time. I no longer go to New Zealand. My daughter and her family have moved here from New Zealand. One of the things, I don't know that you need to put it on your prayer list, but they have lived with us for a while, waiting on Jason to get his green card. So if you would just remember to ask God to nudge the feds along a little bit and get Jason's green card for him. Because she said, well, you know, she has a job, but there she's concerned about, you know, well, anyway. Sure would like Jason to get his green card for him. But it is good to have them here. I see the grandchildren every day now instead of once every 2 years. My granddaughter from France, Celia Jo, is now 10. And I was over there last year in August, and she told me that if they could afford it, she was planning to fly to the States this summer, like her brother did when Tristan was 10. But she said, Mama says she will have to see if we can afford it. So I talked to Mama, and I told Mama, I said, you can afford it. So she was here for 6 weeks. I took her back to Atlanta on the 14th and put her on a plane back to France. It's the first time that she and her cousin Lucy, that had been in New Zealand, had ever met. And they were joined at the hip for 6 weeks. They were happy times. There were times when they didn't get along so well, but they had a great time, and it was really a joy to see, you know, Lucy's now 11. She's a lot older than CJ, of course. But they basically spent the summer together, so that was a great time. I'll be going back to France next year. I only have to go overseas once every 2 years now. So that's a kind of a relief, because old Grandpa's getting a little where he don't like the long flight to New Zealand. I'm glad that was over, because that was tough. The 1 year is not quite so bad, but I'm sure I'll get to the time there when I don't feel like making that trip. Anyway, any other? That's what's going on with me. Anybody else?
How's your wife doing?
She's feisty, which means she's doing fine.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Our miracle baby was just mega weird, but, you know, had a heart transplant 16 years ago, senior in high school.
I know. We talked about that earlier.
And you remember Elizabeth over here, she
Yep.
was in the children's church, and that was, she's 25, and she'll be 26.
She's what?
She's 25,
26 next week.
and she'll be 26 next week.
If you weren't in church, I'd say you're lying.
I can verify, because Hannah will be 27, so,
Oh, wow. That's-
I know.
When we had Laura, when she was up there too, she's gonna be 24 in October, but she's not here with us.
Yeah, I remember all of them lined up here. Sometimes we had 2 rows of them.
I'm not feeling sorry for any of you. My youngest will be 44 come November.
Yeah, mine too. I will share with you, I appreciate the prayers for my brother. He survived the lung transplant and all of that. Unfortunately, about 4 months ago, he was diagnosed with cancer in the lung that was not the transplant. And he didn't make it. But he told me, he said, well, he said, I got 2.5 years. The good news from that is that I sat and talked with him. Of course, you know, I was not his pastor, I was his brother. And he told me, he said, about 2 weeks before he died, he said, I'm ready to get this over with. Ready to get it done. Because he knew everything was going to be just fine. And anyway, it was a sad time, but when you mentioned hospice a while ago, I thought how wonderful it is that we have that service now. Because it was just such a blessing for Jody and the family when they came in. I was there one night and they were bringing me pain medication at 11:30 at night. So it's a great, great program. If you get support that hospital program, it is well worth it. I guess if we're going to get done for evening, maybe I ought to get started. I don't have a watch on, Bill. When I go over, raise your hand or throw a hymn like me or something, okay?
He said he would.
I know he would. Oh, well, Teresa called me and I said, Teresa, I'll put something together, okay? Don't have the energy I used to have, but I'll do what I can, all right? A fellow by the name of Al Henniger was a pastor, and he wrote, any of you take Reader's Digest? Remember the old Reader's Digest? Well, they have a section in there called Life in these United States, and he wrote an article for that one time, and he said, freshly graduated from seminary, I was a minister at a small church in Texas. The region had been suffering a drought, and one hot afternoon, a farmer and I were discussing the weather. Look at those serious clouds over there, he said, pointing to the southwest. You must mean cirrus clouds, I replied, smug with my college education. Actually, they're probably cumulus clouds. He eyed me for a moment, and he said, son, there's just 2 kinds of clouds. Them that's serious and them that ain't. Someone has estimated that if we were able to accumulate, or if we were to graph in some way the accumulation of knowledge from the beginning of recorded history down to about 1945, the knowledge that we would have accumulated would be about an inch. Okay? If we're putting on our yardstick. What we learned from 1845 to 1945, that 100-year period in there, would probably amount to about 3 inches. Now, what mankind has learned from 1945 to 1975 would be represented by a distance of about 6,660 inches, which is taller than the Washington Monument. Now, what the knowledge that we have accumulated since that time, there's no way to measure. For some of us, as we look back over our lives, the thing that has happened has just been, it's phenomenal, the things that we have learned. We get smarter and smarter. But when we look at the world around us, it seems like we're missing something on it. There's more crime. We can't build prisons fast enough to warehouse the criminals. There's more war, more broken homes, more problems in society. On Tuesday evening, you're going to have a choir here. I assume it's the African American group that was here last year. Those people know how to praise the Lord, don't they?
Amen.
We thought we had made a lot of progress in that area, but in the area of civil rights, but we haven't come that far, have we? We have all sorts of problems in our society. When it comes to managing the basic issues of life, I don't know that our generation is any better off than the generations before us that did not have the knowledge that we have. In fact, it seems like we're losing ground. This leap in scientific and technical knowledge has not been paralleled with a corresponding leap in wisdom. To use another term, we could call it common sense. We can parrot the difference between a cirrus cloud and a cumulus cloud, but we can't evaluate the serious effects that come into our lives. Common sense today just isn't that common. I see it every day at work. When I see some of the things that staff people do, I think, common sense tells us not to do that. Or common sense tells us to do that. And I wonder what happened to the common sense. Today we can send a cruise missile down someone's chimney from a radar-resistant airplane flying 600 miles per hour at a height of 3.5 miles. But we don't have a clue as to how to prevent the war that caused all that to happen. Common sense isn't all that common because it doesn't come with knowledge or technology. Common sense is the application of that knowledge or that technology to the events today. Smarter doesn't mean wiser. I guess that's why they say the term, I'm older and wiser. Because as we live and some of us get older, we have to get wiser. But wisdom comes from a different source than knowledge. And it functions independently of the cars that we drive that tell us when a door's ajar and all this stuff and these things that we carry in our pockets that literally control our lives. That's why we can always go back to God's Word, and there we can find the guide for our lives today.
Amen.
We're going to be looking at Proverbs 2, 1 through 11 this morning. You don't have to turn to it. I'm going to read it to you. Solomon writes, My son, if you will receive my sayings and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom. Incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasures, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice, and he preserves the way of his godly ones. Then you will discern the righteousness and justice and equity of every good course. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will guard you. Understanding will watch over you. Discretion, Solomon says, will guard us. Discretion is the ability to make wise and responsible decisions. It doesn't come by reading books. It isn't directly related to smarts and IQs. It doesn't come overnight. It comes with time and it comes with experience. Some call it the school of hard knocks. It's the ability to show good judgment. It's having a knack for making wise and responsible decisions. And Solomon says, here, in essence, this wisdom will keep you from having a lot of heartaches in your life. Common sense, some people call it horse sense. We all know what horse sense is, right? Horse sense is what keeps horses from betting on people. Whatever you want to call it, you can call it wisdom, discretion, horse sense, we need it. And we need it badly because it keeps us from a lot of entanglements in our lives and actually makes us more fit for God's use. I cannot teach you this common sense in a sermon. I'm not about to even try. I hope that this morning we can learn to appreciate it a little more. Maybe I can give you a few examples of some of the things that I've learned in the few short years that I have lived. Because by its nature, common sense or wisdom is something that we're always learning. And we can never have enough of it. No one has ever arrived. We never get our PhD in common sense. So given these human limitations, I want to look at 4 areas I think that pertain to common sense. And I warn you ahead of time, these are not flashy. If you go to sleep, you go to sleep because it's not an exciting kind of thing we're going to do this morning. In fact, they're pretty common. But if we learn them and we practice them like Solomon told his son, they keep us from a world of trouble. And each of these 4 elements has its roots in the Bible. So first I want us to look, common sense looks ahead. Common sense looks ahead. Jesus in Luke 14:28-30 was talking to the disciples, and he said, for which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who observe it begin to ridicule him. We've all seen that happen, haven't we? Common sense teaches us to slow down, sit down, figure out what's involved before we commit ourselves to a decision or an action. Look ahead, plan ahead. One of the most frustrating things I have with our executive director is it takes Robert a long time to make a decision. And I told him one day, I said, Robert, it's frustrating. I mean, I've worked for the man for 26 years, I can say that. I said, it's frustrating waiting on you to make a decision. He said, I know it frustrates all of them. But he said, I don't have to back up with those decisions very often. It's wisdom. Thinking things through before you pull the trigger on something. Solomon agrees with Jesus, said we shouldn't rush things before Solomon. Solomon says over in Proverbs, he said, it's a snare for a man to say it's holy. And after that vow, go and make the inquiry as to whether or not it really is. Most people go through a period in our youth, I did, you did, the young people today are, oblivious to this fact of common sense. They have a false notion that bad things only happen to other people. They have a false notion they're going to live forever. They have a false notion that they're immune to the mistakes that other people make and the consequences that other people pay for making those mistakes. A little bit headstrong, not really prone to listening to advice. I had to talk to my grandson the other day. I said, your parents will get smarter as they get older. But what happens is if we continue to do that, we lock ourselves into situations that we can't escape, and it causes a lot of hurt in our lives. Both Jesus and Solomon would ask us, what would be the result? Who's going to be affected? Is this thing that you're wanting to do really worth the risk? Is it necessary? What would Jesus think? These are things that a person with common sense has to ask before they take the leap. If you're thinking about buying a new home, you got to count the cost, don't you? You have to figure out whether or not you can make this happen without causing hurt. You have to count the cost. So common sense looks ahead. Another thing that common sense does is it doesn't despise simple things. Now that's a little humbling, but there's something about the basics that it's important that we understand. Remember, Jesus was talking to Martha one time, and Martha was hurrying and scurrying around the house, and Jesus said, Martha, hold up, slow down. Not everything is necessary. There are times I tell my wife, why are you doing this? She said, because somebody's got to do it. No, somebody doesn't have to do it. Sometimes it's okay. Not everything is necessary. And most of us would probably do well to post that on our refrigerators, put it out in the garage, where we've got all that stuff stored in case we ever needed it, that we're never going to use. Things we couldn't live without. I learned a long time ago, if I haven't used it in a year, toss it. Get rid of it. Give it away. Because tomorrow I'm going to need it. Right now, University of Tennessee is all of you. I know you two fans, you're waiting to see what Coach Pruitt's going to do with the Bibles this year. He's got them out there. He's teaching them the basics, and I'm hoping he's going to be tough. But he's got those boys running and blocking and tackling and learning the fundamentals that maybe they didn't know before. And that will be the difference between a successful season and a losing season. And the same is true of life. If we neglect the fundamentals, we're going to be in a world of hurt. Well, what are the fundamentals? Well, if we go back to God's Word, we have honesty. We have truth. We have respect for authority.
Amen.
Character. Consistency with God.
Integrity.
Integrity. Humility.
Responsibility.
Responsibility. All of these things they're the basics, they're the fundamentals. Now they don't attract a lot of attention, do they? But boy, when trouble starts and you've got them in your pocket, it makes all the difference in the world. The story told about a young man that applied to a farmer for a job, and the farmer was asking him his qualifications. He said, well, I can sleep when the wind blows. The farmer kind of scratched his head and he thought, well, okay, whatever that means. So he hired him. One night a storm came. The wind was blowing, a lot of thunder and lightning, all that going on. They got up to check things and saw that all the windows in the house were down. The barn doors were shut, all the livestock was pinned up, all the equipment was put in the shed. Everything had been taken care of. And then he understood what the young man meant when he said, I can sleep when the wind blows. Because when the skies were clear, he'd taken care of everything. So we need to learn to be able to sleep when the wind blows. Life's a lot less complicated when we take care of the basic things. The Bible's full of lessons. It's a full course in the basics of life. And so much of the things that cause us trouble in our lives are really preventable. So don't wait till you're in trouble. Be concerned about the basics. A lot of head knowledge doesn't have anything to do with common sense. I don't mean that we should be ignorant. I don't mean that we should be uneducated. But in all the coursework that I took in school and all the coursework that you have taken in school made you smarter, but it didn't make you wiser. Sometimes it just makes us too smart for our own good. Paul spoke in Romans and he said, those who profess to be wise but have become fools. Sometimes they got smarter themselves. I get tickled with some of the people at work that deal with some of our clients, that are, especially in the residential programs, and they say, well, they're too smart for their own good. And I say, no, they're too smart for your own good. I have to share this with you. Bill, you may stand up and throw a hymn at me anytime, I don't know. But we were sitting in the staffing the other day. We have some programs, a couple of group homes that are for severely mentally ill people who are also medically fragile, which means we have to have nurses on duty and all that sort of thing. And they were sitting in staffing one day, and I've always said that the mentally ill in group home live on two things, that's caffeine and nicotine. They drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. And some of the people don't smoke. And one of the guys that doesn't smoke was buying cigarettes with his money, and then he was selling them to other residents, okay, when they run out of cigarettes. And they said, well, so-and-so is selling cigarettes. And I said, well, what's he getting for them? They said 15 cents a piece. And I said, well, how much does a pack of cigarettes cost? And they told me, and I said, well, whoever his case manager needs to talk with him because he's losing money. If he's going to be an entrepreneur, let's help him make a profit. But he's selling cigarettes. I don't care if he's selling cigarettes. He's got a little game going. And then they told me, and this was terrible, at night, in one of the back rooms, they're playing spades for money. And I said, okay. I said, what are we going to do about it? I said, why would we do anything? Well, what if they run out of money? I said, the natural consequence is that you're broke. I said, what you people don't realize is they are bored to death living here, and they think they're pulling something over on you. They're too smart for your own good. Leave them alone. Let them enjoy their lives. But sometimes we think we become too smart for our own good, and we outsmart ourselves. Complex things, complex problems call for complex answers, not always. Some of you remember Dr. Morrow, that preached here years ago. And I used to sit in philosophy class under Dr. Morrow, and I'd say, okay, Dr. Morrow, if I'm understanding this right, this da-da-da. And he'd say, well, I think you're trying to oversimplify things. Well, for me, it had to be simple. I have to get everything down to the lowest common denominator. Dr. Morrow didn't have to do that. He was smart enough to deal with other things. But sometimes, if we're not careful, we make problems too complex and forget about the root of the problem. One of the things I always admired about Jesus and everything that he taught, he always dealt with the root of the problem. Not the problem itself, but the root. We had a woman the other day they were telling about in staffing, and they said, oh, this and this and this. That's why she acting that way. I don't know, it's just her nature. I said, has anybody ever tried to find out why she acts that way? That's where we need to really be finding that. That's where we really need to go. We don't need to deal with the symptoms, we need to deal with the illness. So we need to get back to the simple things. Person doesn't balance a checkbook. Boy, I love online banking. I don't write checks anymore. If I write a check, it just messes me up totally and completely. I've fought it for years. But you remember the time when you had, oh gosh, you got to balance my checkbook. You got to sit down and write checks. Well, if a person doesn't do that, before long they're in trouble financially, and the bank's sending them letters telling them they're overdrawn. He puts them aside, says he's going to deal with it later. Well, later it never comes. He's got checks bouncing around like a rubber ball. So he decides, okay, I'm going to get a credit card. So he gets a credit card, and he finds out, okay, I can buy $100 worth of stuff, pay $10 a month. Before long, credit card's maxed out. 2 years at the end of that shopping spree, it's time to pay the piper. He's got an ulcer, his marriage is on the rocks because of the whole financial situation. Life gets complicated, and all he had done was balance the checkbook. In our relationships, Communication is a simple answer, isn't it? If we're raising children, discipline is important. In school, it's study. In finance, it's budget. In spiritual things, it's our daily walk with God. Now, there are a lot of things out there that are a lot more exciting and a lot snappier than these are. But those snappy things are what get us in trouble. Sometimes all we need to do to begin the process of healing our misery is just return to the simple things, the good common sense things. Third thing was we need to learn lessons from our mistakes. You ready for the hymn yet, Bill? Wake up, Bill. You ready? Okay, it's getting close. He's got his hearing aid in, he can hear me now.
What was the third one again?
Learning from our mistakes.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody makes mistakes. It's part of being human. The Apostle John said in 1 John 1:8, he said, if we have no sin, we're deceiving ourselves, and the truth is not in us. And then 2 chapters later, in 1 John 3:9, he says, no one who is born of God practices sin. Well, somewhere in between those two important truths is a learning process. The idea is that we are supposed to be learning from our mistakes and not returning to them. So a person with common sense learns from their mistakes. They don't repeat them. I have people come in and say, Fran, I messed up. I made a mistake. Okay, that's all right. How can we learn not to do that again? The Apostle Peter, talk about learning from mistakes. He was a little slow. One afternoon, Jesus was telling his disciples about the coming crucifixion. Peter interrupted and he said, no way, Lord, not going to let that happen. Not as long as I'm around. Jesus said to Peter, Peter, your ideas of the devil, not God. Did Peter learn from that mistake? No. Later, Judas brought the chief priests and the Pharisees to Gethsemane, I'll get it out, to arrest Jesus. And only a few days earlier, Jesus had predicted that this was going to happen. Peter had heard about the fact that there was a betrayer among them. And no doubt when he saw Judas at Gethsemane, he knew who it was, so what did he do? Did he recall the earlier mistake? When he resisted Jesus' plan? No, whipped out his sword and somebody's ear came off. Jesus went over, picked up the ear, put it back on the guy's hand, looked at Peter, shook his head, and said, when are you going to learn? I'm going to call down 12 legions of angels to prevent this. Did Peter ever learn? Yes, he did. And he became one of the greatest men in the history of the church. The power of common sense is we learn from our mistakes. And the fourth thing is common sense strives for perspective. By perspective, I mean being able to see the big picture. I'm amused by a fellow named George Morrow of a company called Morrow Business Systems. He understands seeing the big picture in the area of business. In some of his writings, he refers to what he calls market myopia. Now, myopia is a visual defect. Boy, I can't hardly talk to that. A visual defect that when people can only focus on things up close. They can see the parts and the pieces of what's out there. Anyway, Morrow says some people don't understand what business they're in. For example, the railroad people didn't realize they were in the transportation business. They thought they were in the railroad business. Had they realized they were in the transportation business, they would have invested in the airplane. The telegraph people thought they were in the telegraph business instead of the communication business. In 1886 or so, they could have bought all the telephone patents for $40,000. Obviously, these people didn't know what business they were in. He says, I used to think these guys were really dumb because they didn't know what business they were in, and then I asked myself, what business am I in? He said, I have yet to hear an intelligent answer to that question. If you're a mom at home and you're changing diapers, I ask you, what business are you in? Are you in the diaper changing business? Or are you in the business of raising responsible people? If you're working in a local factory, I ask you, are you in the business of making widgets for 49 weeks out of the year so that you can go on vacation and rest up for 3 weeks and you come back and make more widgets? Or are you God's emissary in the place where you work? See, common sense steps away from time to time and asks the important question, why am I doing what I'm doing? What business am I really in? And the person lacking common sense just runs on bouncing around like a ping pong ball. The person with common sense takes the time to step back and see what his purpose is. What is my purpose? Well, why am I here? Well, that's where we have to go to God and find out what our purpose is. We have to see what He says about us. That's why the Bible is so clear when it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When a person fears God, when he acknowledges who God is and His place in relationship to God, that's when he finds the real answers of life. Why am I here? What's the purpose of my existence? What am I supposed to be doing? What's going to happen to me when this life's over? Find and accept God's answers to those questions, my friend, and you'll be well on your way to living a efficient, fruitful, satisfying life. Charlie Brown commented to Lucy in the Peanuts cartoon, "Someone has said that we should live each day as if it were the last day of our life." And Lucy, this is the last day, this is it. She runs off saying, "I only have 24 hours left. Help me, this is the last day." Charlie Brown, sitting there by himself, muses and said, "Some philosophies just aren't for all people." Sadly, common sense isn't either. Judging from the way we run, chase after the flashier things of life. But yet, common sense, knowledge is a prized possession. It's worthy of pursuit. When you think back to the days when God was talking with Solomon, and Solomon told Solomon, he said, "You can have anything that you want in all this world. If you want me to destroy your enemies, I'll destroy your enemies. If you want wealth, I'll give you wealth." What did Solomon do? He asked for wisdom, and God gave it all. Father, we are thankful for your word. We're thankful this morning, Father, that you have filled your word with wisdom. And we pray, Father, that we would feast upon that word, that we would understand it, that we would understand what our purpose is in this life. So, Father, as we go forth from here, we pray and we ask, as Solomon did, that you would grant us wisdom, that our lives might be fruitful and that we might be complete. We'll pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. 315.